best thing, what I love about these families is that, for ages, they've been featuring this and taking this, age-old heirloom recipes and keeping it so close to them and giving it to the whole world. And I think that's where these ingredients have that much stature in the entire world.
The younger generation is updating it. They're doing tasting tours and they're doing like little demonstrations. And what I like is that from only the very rich and sophisticated and well-traveled people, now this is reaching a regular home.
The sheep has hit the gram now. Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to yet another episode of the European Union Tadka, the podcast. Today, we have with us in our studio a very bubbly personality, a chef who I love talking to because every time you talk to her, she's so full of life because life just goes around her. And her name is Chef Shinu. Chef Shinu, welcome to the studio. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Chef. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I can see it all over this, Chef Shinu and her life and everything around it is so exciting.
And it's fun because I used to host a show called Firangi Tadka, which I think is like perfect for European Union Tadka.
Absolutely,
Right? Yes.
absolutely. To be honest, we call you Firangi anyways.
Me?
Yeah,
Why?
You're half Firangi. You're married to a Swiss guy.
That doesn't make me. I
you've
just
lived-
have my Indian passport. I don't want a Swiss passport.
But you've lived abroad for so long. You studied in France, I believe. This.
Yes.
Talk to us about your journey.
So I was 21 years old in Paris at Le Cordon Bleu. And I have to say that is the best age to live in Paris. Because everything was just so fun and all this. Like, I think that whole thing of like French people don't speak in English. If you're a cute Indian girl, people speak to you in English everywhere you go. It's fine. And I think my first exposure to how seriously people take ingredients and provenance and, the appellation contrôlée and like you can't call any wine Bordeaux unless it's from there. And that exposure, it wasn't through culinary school. It was actually from living in Paris and breathing in that culinary air.
It's almost like religion to them, I mean, good rule, you can't just, be blasphemic about a wine or a cheese or anything like that. They take it so seriously. But I think that is driven from the fact that each European Union member state, whatever they produce, they are under a very strict guideline, whether it's AOC, as you mentioned about the wines, or it is the PDO or the PGI labels, they're very, very strict.
So I went to Lyon to Paul Bocuse's restaurant as a starving student and like collected all my money and he was still alive. And he came to each table and I told him, I'm from India and I'm
Paul Bocuse
studying.
himself?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I know.
Yeah, wow. I've only read him in books, man. It's like Paul
I
Bocuse.
have a picture of him. I have a menu signed by him. He took me inside his kitchen.
Wow.
And the kitchen was more beautiful than the outside.
So, Chinu, you've lived the dream life. Any chef would want to live that life at the age of 21 in France, soaking up the sun, enjoying some beautiful wine and cheese and all the food. I really want to know and dig down deeper as to what else did you do? I mean, the good stuff.
So one very, very special moment was, a starving student taken a loan. Luckily at Cordon Bleu, you could take home all the food you made every day.
Wow.
Yeah, yes, that's I was eating some good cuts of meat and stuff. But I
Doesn't
stayed.
show up though.
It's called the paleo.
Yeah.
They had then 3 tables of cheese that would come. And you
Wow.
could pick out whichever cheese you wanted. The sommelier was amazing. My new discovery at that time was Pinot Noirs from Burgundy. That was the stuff I learned in Paris. Not that you had to have the most expensive thing,
Right.
but that everything was made with care. You could find your favorites among cheese, among wine. People would like to, like if you went to a farmer's market, they'd want you to taste their stuff.
Right. They take so much passion,
Yeah.
in everything that they do, whether it's, they're growing stuff or they're making stuff. I think that is so exemplary and that makes that food so amazing. So we did talk about, the high quality stuff that you can obviously experience there. But also I believe that, that high quality stuff is not just good tasting, but it's also very healthy. So what's been your take on that front? Because how have you seen people enjoying their food, but yet making sure that they're eating healthy?
Where your food is coming from is a very important conversation. One which I really try and bring up a lot because, I have a kid and I think children need to also know where their food is coming from and connect the dots to like how much effort actually goes into what they're eating.
So obviously one aspect of eating healthy is obviously knowing where your food's coming from and very well explained. But what are the other things that you see in this whole wide world, why people are choosing those healthy ingredients that are coming from either Europe or everywhere else?
Firstly, I think there is no point in being healthy if it's not also delicious.
Right.
I am very against undelicious healthy food.
I love this word delicious because, when I went to Japan, it's a beautiful word, it's called oishi.
Oishi.
Yeah, oishi, it's wow,
See,
swadisht.
that is what the Japanese have done it beautifully because most of what they eat is really good for you, blue zones and all of that.
Yeah.
Same thing in like Tuscany or Sardinia and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
And it's not like they're running marathons or Ironman or anything. They're connected to the land.
Right.
Just keep like go into your garden and pluck some lemons or like, cook. Even if you make pasta, but it's handmade, artisanal, fresh pasta, you're using really good type O flour, you're using like really amazing free range eggs from your hen house,
So it's all about the ingredients, really. It's all about picking those ingredients and making your food yourself.
It's also about coming to. I'm very inspired by this blue zones areas where life expectancy is like over 100 years without
Yeah.
on the surface doing much, but as they go into it, it's
Yeah.
about coming together as a family, food as community.
And I think Italy is one big example because India, we are very family oriented.
Yes.
I think Italy is another big example of, large family tables, large family dinners, enjoying the wine, enjoying the breads, enjoying the meats together. It's all about family.
Dolce
Yeah.
far niente.
Yeah. And also, I think you touched about the life expectancy. I mean, things like olive oil or berries, they're rich in antioxidants, polyphenols. And that's what really helps you to kind of, age slower. So
Yeah.
obviously that makes a lot of sense.
I was saying we should be doing olive oil espresso shots.
Yeah.
Good fats are the key. So olives, amazing source of good fats. Olive oil, fantastic. Avocado, coconut, all these things, your nuts. I mean, because fats are what regulate our insulin response.
Right.
Instead of eating all these carbs first thing in the morning, if you ate like good fats, your body is like, okay,
Yeah.
waking up to then the digestion process in a better way.
Right.
I mean, that's where all these diets like keto and stuff take it to a different extreme. I don't believe in extreme diets.
Right.
I don't think you should cut out any food group from your life. Again, because they taste too good.
Yeah.
What is life without a croissant?
Yeah. Prashant.
Prashant. Right. But to do it in a way that supports your body so you understand nutrition a little better.
Yeah.
So soaked, almonds or walnuts, Brazil nuts, especially for women, especially for kids.
Yeah.
Health choices should be pleasure oriented, otherwise it's not sustainable.
Right.
If you're just on this deprivation, sad thing.
You do it for a while and then.
And then what happens is you start binging and then you get back to right where you were.
Maybe more.
Yeah, it has to be something.
So I think what you're saying is that health, food, lifestyle, all directly proportional.
Yes, it's a holistic point of view.
It's important also to, I think, understand that if they understand their food better, if they understand where their food is coming from,
Yes.
if they understand how it was grown or how it was cultivated or how it was, reared,
Yeah.
you will know that, okay, I am having this beautiful Dutch blue cheese
Yes.
and it's high in fat and
Yes.
flavor,
Yes.
then I have my sourdough.
And that's good for you.
Yeah.
The sourdough is like naturally fermented. The gluten has almost disappeared in it.
Right.
The cheese, again, you know what the cows are eating.
Right.
And this is, again, like a conversation I keep bringing up with kids is like, read labels, know your ingredients, know where what is coming from, connect those dots of what is going inside you, because people don't like to spend money on food. And I take great offense to this idea that you pay more for your bags and watches than what is actually going inside your body.
And also, I think this I've lately realized that we pay more to our doctors than to our, grocers. If we pay well to our grocers and to our farmers, we probably paying lesser to our doctors.
Totally. It's this kind of conversation, I think, that brings up to people like, I'm getting this like sliced cheese for 50 rupees. Why should I pay more for it? It's the same thing as why do you have an iPhone and not of something else?
Right.
You know? So
it's about the quality. So now we see this health aspect also moving into our menus, and how we as chefs are planning our menus. What are your thoughts on that?
initially, it was just 5-star chefs like yourself and 5-star hotels which had access to these ingredients, right? So you must have had like access to some of the, when nobody else around here, none of the restaurants and all had all those. So
You're right.
what was that like?
Because I think we're talking about almost, the year 1998,
Let's not
99.
give away our age.
Yeah, okay, fine. So in the early 2000s, you would say, right? The millennium, that at that time. I remember that, I was working with this hotel chain who would have a buyer in Holland.
Wow.
And he would actually source everything from around Europe and bring it all together as a consignment and then send it to us, because it was very difficult because your quantities are not so huge. It's not a container load that you're bringing in.
Sure.
So there were these singular guys who were picking up stuff from everywhere and sending it to us. But I remember that in the early 2000s we had the access to actually taste an Emmental cheese, a Gruyere cheese, a Gouda cheese, and all the beautiful cheeses that came from Switzerland or Netherlands. And you had the access, you knew about it, you almost took it for granted, till the time I reached restaurants and I see that, oh my God, there's this huge divide, because a full walk-in full of cheeses and cold cuts and everything is like a monthly supply coming in. And here in a restaurant, I'm trying to plan a menu. I'm saying, eat them. No, it's too expensive. Let me change it to another cheese. So that's how I think my experience has been, like chalk and cheese.
Also, I think the supply chain has improved drastically.
Now, yes.
Refrigeration and stuff like that, I mean, things used to arrive and just be like at room temperature. And I think that was the problem with my catering company. When we started, our quantities were tiny, you know. We were doing house parties and like brand events and things like that. Like to call the suppliers and say like, I need actually just 4 pieces of camembert.
Yeah.
But I think now with exposure, and there were some things you only expected in 5-star restaurants and hotels, but now people are serving them in their homes.
Home house parties, as you said.
Yeah, like the truffle explosion.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it can't be a fancy menu without something truffle on it. Or like burrata, or like, it's become a part of the collective consciousness.
In fact, I've seen people gifting, those truffle bottles with a truffle oil bottle, almost like a perfume set, to people, and say, oh, wow, I'm gifting truffles this Diwali.
I mean, we had a client, not to be named, who brought down truffles from Alba for one of her dinners by private plane.
Wow.
And she was like, do you need anything from London on the way? I can just send the plane there. And then like, I gave her a list of like some wish list.
Yeah,
of,
by
like,
the way,
just get that.
Andheri station se thoda sa white asparagus bhi liana, from Netherlands, just stop by,
Exactly. I mean, what I like is that from the province of the only the very rich and sophisticated and well-traveled people, now this is reaching regular homes. Like we're doing so many grazing tables.
Right.
Which look gorgeous. You have your charcuterie, you have your cheese, you have all your condiments, you have amazing breads. And it also is kind of like a centerpiece to your party.
That's right.
It's like edible decor.
Right.
Yeah. It's just annoying when no one eats it.
Yeah. Or they drink too much and then don't care what there is.
For your next party, you could just do that.
Do that. Yeah, absolutely. I think what has also changed is that right from, being a status symbol, that, I'm flying in truffles from here.
Yeah.
It is now the understanding of that truffle.
Yes.
That the best truffle is from Alba,
Yes.
or the best olive oil is probably from Greece or Portugal. That also has trickled down into people's lives, because what I feel is that since its availability has increased, people are reading more labels, they're trying more food.
Yeah.
And I think now they're very aware of PDO, PGI, all these aspects of picking up food. Do you read labels as well?
Oh yeah, I'm a big follower of Michael Pollan's 5 rules of like if there's anything you can't pronounce, or if your grandmother can't recognize it, or if it has more than 5 ingredients, don't buy it.
Don't buy it. Yeah.
I think also what's helping is tasting menus and hotels and restaurants and even catering companies like mine suggesting to people, why don't you have a raclette counter? Why don't you have like a pasta counter? Why don't you have
counter?
We do truffle counter.
Yeah, oh,
as well.
wow.
We do like
Next time I'm
burrata
coming in.
Oh my god, our truffle counter is delicious. I love truffle. I mean, it's just
Me too.
I love all mushrooms actually.
Yeah.
So talking about truffles, so Chris's dad was a chef in Switzerland, and one of his signature dishes was his morel sauce.
Oh, wow.
Morel
I
mushroom.
love morels.
Me too. I mean, actually, I think morels could compete with truffles. Truffles just has better PR.
Oh, yeah, but then I can't think of a morel oil.
No.
Yeah.
Morels have to be used
Yeah,
in the flesh.
yeah.
So in our first restaurant, when we were both like, completely naive, clueless, let's open a restaurant in Goa,
Young blood.
let's sell it for
energy.
anything. We don't have to make money or anything like
Yeah.
that. His biggest pet peeve was when people would put Tabasco in his that morel sauce that he had been cooking and slow cooking and stuff like that. So that's the change. I think people are appreciating ingredients more. They know, okay, this is a fancy ingredient. It has its own flavor. It has its own earthiness. You can't just blanket everything in Tabasco. And there's nothing like pink sauce.
This look was that food also has a word called blasphemy. You can't put Tabasco on morels.
Exactly. So I think that awareness and people are traveling more for food. I mean, I live in Goa. You've just opened a restaurant in Goa. Goa has become a place where people arrive and they're like, what are we going to eat?
Right.
Where are we going to go?
Right.
It's
all about choices now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what is the agenda for food.
And I think the face of our supermarkets have changed so much. Previously, I remember, because I lived in Goa as well, there used to be one store where you had to drive. Yeah. And you had to drive up all the way, and then you find that you only have 2 sausage packets.
Yes.
One from Jeffrey's and one from Costa's. That's all you had.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, there is so much variety available. Where it's talk about cheese, talk about cold meats, you talk about anything, olive oils, it's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that whole thing about, this coming in of good ingredients, people are also understanding the value of it. As you said, that they're appreciating the flavors, they're appreciating the cooking. Just the craft is becoming more and more popular.
And with social media and Instagram and stuff like that, you're seeing actually food from all over the world.
That's
you
right.
know, we buy big bags of frozen berries just to keep in our freezer because I want to have that beautiful, bright pink smoothie bowl whenever I want.
That's right.
Impossible to imagine that we will just be eating dal rice.
Right.
Or our children, should just be eating khichdi.
Yeah, not just that. I think, previously, this very funny incident. One of my friend, wherever she goes, she looks for Indian restaurants. And I've known her for many years. But, from the last few years, she's asking me questions which are more gourmet. Okay, by the way, I'm traveling to Switzerland, where can I eat? Which restaurant? Should I go and do this, cheese factory tour? Should I do a chocolate tour?
Yeah.
So people more aware, because I remember everybody, even traveling to Switzerland, will look for Indian restaurants.
Yes.
I mean, that's late.
Chai and samosa.
Yeah.
Below Mount Titlis.
Yeah. Why? I mean, you can have chai samosa at the other station as well.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
better.
I know.
Just jokes apart, but I mean, I think PDO and PG are so important, labels that we need to know as consumers, as chefs, because I think everybody is reading labels these days.
Yes.
And the most important part is that what I find as a chef is whenever I'm making menus or, I'm in the bhassad of the kitchen, and suddenly A particular quality is changed to a B particular quality. You're looking at the pasta and says, it's 2 shades more red.
Yeah.
what happened just now?
Yeah.
Oh, the tomatoes were more redder. So you're not getting consistency.
Totally.
For me, I think those labels drive me to perfection, to
Yeah.
consistency, to great quality.
And I also think that they're protecting certain ways
Yeah.
of doing something. As chefs, especially now that we've all become like influencers,
Yeah.
celebrities,
Influencer.
like judges
Yeah.
and stuff, we get a lot of bhav.
Yeah.
But a person who's waking up morning and night and making the ingredient is rarely recognized, protected, supported. And I think that's what these labels do.
Yeah.
They say that no, this is what you're doing is important. It's important for the world.
Right. So PDO basically means a product with designated origin, which
Right.
means that everything of its producing, of its making, bottling, or sealing has to happen in that same area.
Right.
And PGI literally means that protected geographical indication, which means that at least one process has happened in that area. So that's
Right.
how these guys get the labels. And we've talked a lot about authenticity. We've talked a lot about those heirloom recipes when they're done.
Yes.
And then these labels, it's just a stamp of surety as a chef, as a consumer, as a cook, that you are going to get the same product all along.
Right. No, and I think this needs to spread like all over the world.
Right, right. Now I want to touch about sustainability because I think everybody is talking about that, we have very less earth now left to
Yes.
produce good food
Yes.
because we're not taking care of the earth, we're not re-nurturing the land, or we are not looking at ways of cutting down, in how we use pesticides. So what are your thoughts as a chef? How do you see this?
Firstly, as a mom, and I've gotten more and more interested in nutrition. So I'm actually studying nutrition right
Right.
now. And I'm studying nutrition,
Interesting.
women's hormonal health, women go through so many different phases.
Bone health.
We actually have 4 or 5 completely different phases in our life,
Right, right.
including like pregnancy and postpartum and beyond that.
Right.
And the amount of toxins that are actually going into our bodies through food, through especially lots of processed and packaged foods, or your regular vegetables, which, fertilizers and herbicides and all of that. So many lifestyle diseases are coming up because of toxicity.
That's right.
And when I go to, say, a supermarket, like when we visit Chris's village, there is so much transparency. There's so many organic options. There are so many brands, like even big brands,
Which are moving towards organic.
yeah, which all have an organic line, which all have very clearly stated what goes in it and what doesn't.
Right.
There's no mystery food.
Right. What went inside my meat?
Yeah, especially when we think of farmers' health and co-ops and the support that we need to give back. This, I feel, is a sustainable way forward
Yeah.
for farming, for manufacturing companies, for food brands,
Right.
is to really consider the impact of the food.
I mean, I'm always looking for natural, resourced, organic food, which is well thought of. I can go back to the line where it was produced, how it was produced. But I think as a country, as a generation, we are now becoming more and more aware of it. Previously, we've kind of taken more, given less to the nature. So now that we are doing this, I think in a few years, we can also have a lot more varieties, as you are saying that, if I go to a farmer in Switzerland or if I go to a farmer in Italy, I know where my meat is coming from. I
Yeah.
know where my olive oil is coming from.
Yeah.
So I think that also needed to be addressed, and I thought it'll be a good
I think it's
point.
a matter of trust.
Yeah.
People often ask me, "Arey, how do you know it's organic?"
Right.
Which, I mean, that opens up a larger question. But when it comes to European Union licenses and, all the approvals and stuff,
Yes, yes, that's very important.
it's organic if it's
Yeah.
saying it's organic.
Yeah,
It's
because
not
the
like,
fines are huge.
yes.
Yeah.
I think building up trust, building up transparency, respecting the person who's making it,
Right.
paying them more for their work.
I think that's more important. That's
Yeah.
very important because I remember my first job as a prep cook was in an American restaurant, and they were stepping foot for the first time in India, and they wanted to, make sure that the same quality of the hot sauce was being made here.
Right.
And for that, they wanted the chili pepper of a certain Scoville.
Yes.
And I know this because, I was very closely working with the manager that time.
Right.
And she would show me those graphs. She would show me those labels. She would show me that this particular grower in Andhra Pradesh is what we have finally agreed with.
Right.
And they were talking, and that was really building trust.
Yeah.
What's happening is that the farmer to the consumer, there is so many lines in between.
Hello.
I think what we need to do is
And
get an
that
open
is
channel.
That manager giving that farmer her trust and putting her money where her mouth is,
Right.
saying we will buy your whole stock from you because you're making a quality
Right,
product.
right.
Which right now via the middleman and XYZ,
Right.
there is no reward for actually being
Honest.
Honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think so. That's very good. Thank you, Chinu, for touching about a hard topic. But I think as chefs, we need to address this. That the food that we use, whether it's from our country, anywhere else, has to be true. Has to be making sure that the person who's growing it is growing it with love, passion, and care because he's been paid for it.
Yes.
Imagine I am not getting paid well to make my food. Will I make great food? Maybe not.
Exactly.
So it actually.
Why would you care?
Yeah, you will put your trust, or you will put your pot where your belly is.
Yeah. Because it is harder to do organic food. I mean, I did a biodynamic farming course, and it's crazy the amount of work. You have to look at the lunar calendar. You have to grind crystals into water and make vortexes, and then put that into your plants. And that's why biodynamic wine
Yeah.
costs more because that guy is doing all these things.
Yeah.
Whereas the other guy is just spraying it with pesticide
Right.
and then he's done.
We're also talking about biodiversity. That's very, very important again to look at in terms of farming techniques and how we are looking at not just one way of growing things or one way of producing things. It's also a lot of diverse functions that that can happen. I mean, who would think that Parma ham would not have so much real salt, but it's actually dried in a salty air phenomena.
Yeah.
Who would think
Yeah.
that? In some countries, would probably dip it in brine solution and hang it and say, "Oh, this is Parma ham."
Sure.
But they don't. They don't.
Because there is a certain amount of pride in making it
Right.
actually the way it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I'm talking to you. I'm getting this sense that food is beautiful, farming is beautiful. It's just that middle person, that's the consumer, that needs to recognize the art,
Yes.
with it.
And I think that is the change we are seeing, which is so encouraging, of like recognizing quality ingredients, asking for them, asking where they're coming from, the availability of it, and enjoying it.
Yeah.
Enjoying deliciousness.
Oishi,
Oishi!
swadisht.
Zanzani!
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Chinu, because you bring such gorgeous energy to the room.
Thanks,
Every time we speak to you, it's like always a new day. So thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
so much for coming in.